Good morning, everyone. It's nice to see you all here today. My name is Tanya Casas. I'm the Dean of the School of Business, Arts, and Humanities here at DelVal. It's my pleasure for me to welcome you to the Watson Executive in Residence Lecture, which is part of the Watson Executive in Residence and Scholars Program that was established by the late Dr. Thomas William Watson, a 1957 graduate of DelVal, and Judy Wales Watson. I should acknowledge that this is a very sad moment for me and for many here today, as it is the first time we are holding this event since Dr. Watson's passing on November 17, 2024. Tom and his wife, Judy Wales Watson, have left such an indelible mark on this institution through their support and commitment to students over the years, through this program and through other initiatives, including locker room renovations and improvements to our baseball facilities. We're very grateful to Dr. Watson's steadfast commitment to his alma mater and all of the many ways that he and Judy have benefited our students. Dr. Watson and Judy established the Watson Executive in Residence program to expose our business students to the unique career paths and life experiences of executives from many different industries. However, in my last communication with Tom back in October, he made it clear to me that he also wanted us to include a variety of age ranges, particularly Watson executives with less gray hair on their heads. I think he'd be very pleased with our speaker today. In addition to the Watson Lecture, the program provides an opportunity for our students to meet with the executive in residence for career advice, and a student from our business program is selected each semester to receive a Watson Scholarship and introduce the speaker. Before I introduce our Watson Scholar, however, I wanted to pause for a small tribute to Dr. Watson, a truly generous and kind person who served as a mentor for several of us here, sharing tidbits of advice and wisdom, yet still making one feel valued. I'll always remember his closing words in our last correspondence when he bade me to stay amazing. Thank you. So now I'm very pleased to announce that Katya Holmes was selected as the Watson Scholarship recipient. Katya is a first-year business major here at DelVal who's clearly poised to take on the world. She participated in the Spark Bowl, DelVal Shark Tank-like event, in the fall, and her team won first place. She's the founder and president of the Aviation Club and is also a private pilot, which I just find amazing. She has left quite a mark on both faculty and staff who have nothing but positive words to say about her. Although a first-year student, she is set to graduate early in 2027, and I can say she is clearly a young woman who knows how to take advantage of the opportunities that she finds along her path. I look forward to watch all that Katya accomplishes while she is here. Clearly, she is very accomplished, and I'm certain that Dr. Watson would also say, stay amazing. Please welcome Katya Holmes to the podium. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Casas. That was very sweet. I would first like to thank Professor Steele for being an outstanding advisor this entire year. She recommended this opportunity to me, and I'm forever grateful. Thank you to the rest of the faculty of the business department. I would not be where I am without you guys. Also, thank you to the late Dr. Thomas Watson for his continued support of business students at DelVal through the Watson Executive in Residence program. Our speaker today is Bernard Tynes. I had the pleasure of having dinner with him last night. He's a very nice guy, very interesting, not boring at all. The Executive Vice President and Chief Consumer Banking Officer at Penn Community Bank, Bernard leads with a clear vision for innovation, financial growth, and customer-focused strategies. He has over a decade of industry experience. He plays a vital role in enhancing banking experiences, supporting small businesses, and driving economic empowerment. Bernard also serves as the Executive Director of the Penn Community Bank Foundation, where he has expanded the philanthropic efforts around financial literacy and inclusion. He is also an active industry leader and community advocate, serving on the boards of several nonprofits and other industry organizations. He is also recognized both regionally and nationally for his impact in the financial services, and he is a passionate advocate for the transformative power of community banking. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. So thank you so much for having me. It was mentioned that they wanted a speaker that did not have gray hair. I must admit, I do have gray hair coming in. So bear with me. Can you all hear me? So it is quite an honor to be here. I consider this a tremendous honor to talk to you all today and share my perspective with you. Thank you to the business department and everyone that made today possible. It is certainly a privilege to participate in this legacy that you all have here at DelVal. So I'm here today. I'm a boring guy. We were talking about that at dinner last night. Nothing too exciting. She asked, what can we say about you that's interesting? And it's nothing. I go to the gym. I eat rice and chicken to try to stay lean. That's about the extent of my week. And everything else is spent in business working for our community. So I want to present to you today, and the topic is quite interesting, from suits to sneakers, right? That's not what you would always expect to see in a presentation like this. But I really want to talk about how leadership is evolving and how leadership is emerging for a new generation. So here's a quote here, or a comment that I just want to read verbatim. There was a time when work and personal life were two separate paths. But in today's fast-paced, always-on world, the lines have blurred. Navigating that reality takes more than balance. It takes strong, adaptive leadership. So when I think about the world, I think we all think about the world nowadays in terms of before the pandemic and after the pandemic. So when you think about a post-pandemic world, you really understand that leadership is critical. And I know most of you in the room today are in the business division, and we could talk all day long, and I spent a lot of time talking about marketing, right? I just met my marketing colleagues over here not too long ago. I could talk about business strategy, consumer engagement, customer experience. We could talk about the P&L and the balance sheet and all of those fun things. And that's what I learned in the textbooks when I was in your seats. But the one thing that we did not discuss as it relates to business as much as I wish someone had taught me was the ideal of leadership. So for me, the pandemic taught me one really key thing about leadership. And I want everyone to hear this, that you don't manage people, you manage things. And you lead people, right? So there's this concept in business that you're supposed to manage people. You don't really manage people. You should strive to lead people. So this will be the premise for today's talk for the next couple of minutes. So let's talk about my career a little bit. And I have a quote there that's pretty big, and it says, "Tripping along the way is part of the journey," and that is a very true statement. So I started off in financial services. I must admit, I was in college, and I was like on the 5-year plan. And my parents said to me, "Listen, you gotta get a job because we don't even know if you'll graduate, kid." So I went up to the local community bank. And I got a job at our local community bank. I went to Westchester University, got a job there, and I never, ever left the industry. So I started entry level, obviously mid-level, then senior level, and now obviously the executive level. And I will say I bumped my head along the way. I fell down quite a bit. And that brings me to this slide. Who has seen this slide before? Probably everyone in the room. There's this concept that says success is linear, right? I go to college, I get a job, and then I become super successful. That's not what success looks like. It looks really like that second photo, this like squiggly thing going on. And you just go everywhere and do everything. You bump your head, but that proves out to be success. So this photo was me 15 years ago. I was running New Jersey, Philadelphia market for Citizens Bank. So I had about 40 branches. I was like a kid. I think I had to run into one of the branches because people were stealing money, and I was exhausted. This was like at 10 o'clock at night, right? The branches closed at like 5 o'clock. And I was in the vault, and I think I took a selfie and sent it to my friends and said, this is my current situation. I was just like defeated, confused. What's going on with life? Where do I go from here? What happens, right? And this is really, if we're going to be honest, that has been my posture at every step of my career. There's always a point where you're saying, are you serious? I've been called into my president's office a number of times, and she said, hey, I want you to, lead this initiative. This is a true story. I want you to lead a data strategy initiative. And I was like, you do realize that I'm not the tech guy, right? She was like, I know you're not the tech guy, but you have the fire inside to do it. So there are often times in your career that you're going to have this bizarre, strange look on your face, but I encourage you to pursue that. All right. So how did we get to this concept here about sneakers, and what does that have to do with anything? I want to start talking about when I came into the industry, the way I dressed looked much different than the way I dress today, right? I had 3 suits. I had a black suit, a blue suit, a gray suit. I had the most boring ties ever, and I had wingtip shoes, right? And I remember when I took over one of our offices when I was early in my career, and it was really hot in the office. I took my coat off, put it on the back of the chair, and then someone called me into another meeting room. I left my office, ran across the hall without a jacket on. And would you believe I got in trouble for that? Because there was this idea of this unofficial uniform. And it was always a black or blue suit and a ties and wingtips. But what I've come to learn is professionalism was measured in conformity, in predictability, and in caution back then. And the idea of innovation was often viewed as risk, and change was slowed by design, right? That was the world we lived in for a period of time. So then, fast forward to today, and you'll notice something very remarkable, that you see people in sneakers, right? And it's like, what is this guy's fixation on sneakers, right? I was at a very large meeting with national presidents of major banks, and I walked in my old uniform, right, with the black suit and the wingtip shoes. And I was standing next to some of the most prominent leaders in finance. And the one thing that I noticed, that they were all wearing Nike Jordans. And my jaw dropped. It was like, for the last 15 years, I've been trained that you must look a certain way. And now I'm sitting next to a CEO. If I called his name, you would all know him. And he's in Nikes. What does this mean, right? What does this mean? And for me, it was amazing. And it triggered this idea that the shift in footwear reflects a much deeper evolution, right? It's not just about the shoes, right? There's a meaning behind it. It's not just about what you wear. There's a symbolic meaning there. But before we go there, I want to talk about sneakers, because I do actually love sneakers, right? So it's a $130 billion industry in 2024. It's projected at $175 billion by 2030. And sneakers really symbolize resilience and adaptability, and that is something that leaders must take on today. They transcend socioeconomic and cultural barriers, and so there's really something very much symbolic about it and the way that we deal with leadership. So the fall of the uniform leader. What has become known now is teams need leaders who can adapt, who can listen, who can collaborate and innovate, and not just command from the top down. And so the shift in the attire, if you will, is symbolic because we're moving from comfort to conformity, from authenticity to over authority, and movement over stagnation. So I want to do a bit of a metaphor thing here for you and leave you with hopefully something that you can take and leveraging sneakers as a metaphor. Different sneakers are designed for different journeys, if you will, and so are different leadership styles. And so here are how sneakers, to me, mirror the type of leader that you can become. The classic sneaker leader, what does that mean? That you are reliable, that you are timeless, that you are simple or simplistic in the way you deal with things, that you are dependable, that you can be trusted. And the leadership parallel there is consistency and values-driven behavior, right? So that is an important leadership quality and leadership trait, this classic, this timeless style that's appropriate in many business venues. Then the second metaphor for leadership would be the creative sneaker leader. We've all seen sneakers that are like really funky looking, if you will. And what does that really mean? It's this ideal of original and expressive. In the leadership realm, you need bold designs and fearless individuality at some times. It inspires innovation, and you are able to dare to be different. You know, one of the plights in leadership, and when you all go into meeting rooms and into boardrooms, and you can test the integrity of the culture of that business when you sit in a room with people and you observe who the people in the room look to when you need a decision, right? If everyone's in the room and you all look to the boss for a decision, you know that you're really not cultivating a culture of collaboration in that room. Because there's a need for individuality, there's a need for fresh ideas and inclusivity in leadership. The third type of leader is the performance sneaker leader, if you will. And that is built for speed, for endurance, for movement. I have leveraged this type of leadership quite a bit coming up. I took a very opportunistic approach to my career journey. There were just opportunities that presented themselves, and I would move at the speed of light to accomplish them. There's a quote that I read the other day, and it was like, when you become obsessed with something, you become an expert by accident. And that is very much true. I became obsessed with the industry, I became obsessed with my discipline, and because of that, I was able to move quickly and conquer multiple things. So that's one piece of encouragement that I would have for all of you, is when you see an opportunity before you, seize it, right, and learn from it, even if it's not your expertise. The fourth type of sneaker is the sustainable sneaker leader. And this is a purposeful and future-focused leader. This leader is designed for impact, and they lead with long-term vision, and they prioritize legacy. Very, very important to have this type of leader in your composition, right? You have to lead with impact. Never before in our society have consumers been so concerned with values-driven purpose behavior. They look for organizations where their values align. And so that is really critical in the business space. And then the fifth type of leader, the limited edition sneaker leader. And this is the unique leader. They are very rare, and they're built to make a statement. They lead boldly, and they lead with clear vision, right? And so this is all different types of leaders. No one leader is better than the other, but these leadership traits present themselves at different stages in your career. Does that make sense? Like, for example, you cannot be a limited edition sneaker leader at the entry level, right? Because you have to do some work, right? You have to train, you have to learn, and you have to develop. So how to lace up your leadership style in business. Owning the right sneakers is just the start. You have to lace them up and start walking. How to strengthen your leadership style today. So number one, and this is really critical, really critical to me, is lead with authenticity. In business, in everything you do, let it be authentic and don't lead with authority, right? And if you are not being who you truly are in business, guess what? You have to be that pretend person every single time you show up to the office. So gone are the days that you lead by your title or by your position. You really need to lead with who you are. Number two, stay adaptable. Comfort and movement matters. We are living in a world where we were talking about it at dinner the other night. Banks at one time used to project, they would do a 5-year strategic plan. And we were able to leverage indicators from the market and the economic conditions to project out 5 years where we might be at that time period. We can no longer do that because the world is pivoting and it's changing. The Fed was going to lower rates, and they were going to cut rates. And there was a pandemic. There's so much happening: political unrest, social unrest, that impacts the world of business in a way that you cannot forecast out 5-10 years. But you have to be agile and adaptive enough to move with the punches, if you will. Number three, build diverse teams. Difference makes you faster. And diversity comes in all types of forms. In my career, my diversity that I've presented quite often is my age diversity. Banking is typically, or it's not typically, it is a very mature business sector with a lot of people aging out of it. So bringing in fresh ideas from your perspective is very important. In my role, marketing sits underneath my role, and I'll tell you, the freshest ideas we get are from our interns who are your age, right? I no longer know how to work social media effectively, but my intern that's fresh out of college does. I don't even have a TikTok. I don't know what TikTok, I don't even know where to download the app at. And so it's really important that you bring your fresh ideas and drive change with them. It's no longer the time that you had to wait until you were 35, 45, 55 to make a contribution to business, because innovation is so powerful. Number four, stay rooted in values. Good sneakers have souls. It's very important to be values-driven. We were talking also at dinner last night about how some industries, because of the financial pressure and the responsibility for quarterly earnings, that it comes through in the behaviors of associates, and they start misbehaving in terms of driving sales that might be inappropriate or doing things that might be unethical. And that typically comes when there's not a value system in the organization and there's not a value system with the person. So I would encourage you to maintain your own personal value system and find an organization that aligns with. Number five, never stop moving, right? Just never, ever stop moving, never stop learning, never stop striving to achieve. So I'm about to conclude. Iconic sneakers, iconic sneaker models are reimagined, updated, reinvented for new generations, not by forgetting the past, but learning from it and improving it. Leadership works the same exact way. I would encourage you all to find mentors and people that you can learn from, that you can grow from, that you can build from, to help improve your skill set. I am very fortunate that I've had the ability to report to very senior people my entire career that had a wealth of knowledge and views that I otherwise would not have had. And so I encourage you at this stage in your career journey, find someone that you can learn from so that they can help you along the way. Really, really critical. Leadership is ready for you exactly as you are. And that goes back to this concept of authenticity. Bring your entire self to work every day, to your schools every day, to academic every day, because we have never lived in a world where you didn't have to be uniform, right? I no longer have to wear a blue, black, or gray suit with a stiff necktie and hard wingtip shoes, right? I can come to work now on board day, I do put on a tie. I will put on a tie for board day. So that's important to know that you can adjust when you need to. But be yourself, be who you are, and you'll bring tremendous value to whatever industry you decide to work on. Okay? I think that's all my prepared remarks. Any questions or any questions? Comments? Anne. Say that one more time. Yeah, so I would really hone in on the adapting portion. There was a period, and many of you will take tests if you've not taken tests. You know, what type of personality are you? What type of leader are you? And those tests really help you to understand yourself, but also how you work with other people. And also the need to adapt your presentation and your style so that you can get the best out of other people. So to me, it's really about adapting who you are, not in a way that changes the core of who you are, but in a way to really relate and to understand. I've had interns, you know, at one point I was like young, and I was like the youngest one in the room, and it was so fun. And I realize now, being kind of not in that same stage as I get interns in, that the behaviors are different, the concepts are different. I find that our interns today, they're bolder than I was. They're more outspoken than I was. And that's a good thing. And I could easily take offense to that because of my training, or I can adapt my behavior and embrace it. So I think you just have to be agile in it. Great question. Any other questions? I need at least 3 more questions.
How many pairs of sneakers do you own, and what's your favorite?
Nike will always be my favorite. I probably own 30 pairs of sneakers or so. I have an addiction. It's a problem. It's a problem.
When did you first start to notice the change in the business industry from conformity to your ability to be yourself?
I think the pandemic.
Really?
Yeah, there was a shift before the pandemic. The industry was becoming more casual. Business was becoming certainly more casual before the pandemic. But the pandemic took us all home in our houses. And we all joined meetings with, I remember the first couple of meetings, it was like, do I put on a jacket on Zoom? Do I put on a tie? So I'm like sitting on Zoom in a necktie and a jacket and basketball shorts below. Right? And so that brought this whole shift in the way we think and the way we behave, and the idea that we can be very effective in a casual way. I was a big proponent of in-person work. I said you must be in the office to be successful. That was just my opinion. The pandemic proved to me that you can be productive remotely. And now on this side of the pandemic, it's a hybrid, right? There's value to both. But most certainly, the pandemic changed everything. It changed consumer behavior, the way we do business, the way we deliver business. And that was really I think, the pivotal point.
Sorry, excuse me. I have a question about kind of how to be your authentic self and adapt your leadership when you leave college and you get that first job. Trying to switch that mentality of I'm a college student to I'm now a professional in this field.
So I'm a marketer by training, right? I had to go get an MBA so I could be smart enough to lead a consumer bank. And so I'm big on personal brand, right? So I would encourage you, even as you're in the halls of academia today, to start cultivating what does that personal brand look like. And the one thing that we know about brand, it's ever evolving and it changes and it grows. And so I would encourage you to start cultivating and really being intentional about who am I today when I move into my entry-level job, what does that look like? And create a framework for yourself so you can hold yourself accountable to being that person that's truly who you are, but by intention. Does that make sense? Great questions. Don't ask me anything about Bitcoin. I don't know anything about Bitcoin.
I am planning on it. Okay. How would you adjust to leaders who have opposing managing styles and perspectives to what works for you? And to follow up on that, how can you adapt to be a better leader for others?
Okay, so say your first question first.
How would you adjust to leaders that have opposing managing styles and viewpoints to your own?
Okay. So there is a practice that's called managing up. Right? Has anyone heard? So the idea of managing down is simple. When you have direct reports, you manage them. But there's this concept of managing up, right, to the people that you report to. And I think the most critical part in that I have found is finding what's really important to them. What's really important to my boss? I know that my boss, my current boss, loves detail, right? If she has an event, she wants to know what time, where do you park, what color do I wear? She wants to know all of these details that someone like me, I'll figure out where I park when I get there, right? So I find out what's important to her and I manage accordingly. So I think that's really critical in anything you do. If you're reporting to a CFO, guess what? Numbers are really important. So you need to lead with numbers. If you're reporting to a head of marketing, creativity is really important. You need to lead with creativity. If you're reporting to the head of HR, people are really important. You need to lead with people purpose. So it's really finding that important piece and kind of leading with that. Okay. And make it like a Trojan horse, right? Lead with that, and then whatever you want to get it in on the back end. Good question. Anything else? Yes, sir.
What kind of obstacles did you encounter as you were progressing?
What kind of obstacles? So as I was progressing, there was a real challenge with my age, right? I was fortunate enough to really matriculate and grow through professional industry at a very young age. And it was done because of mergers and acquisitions. In my industry, there's a lot of mergers and acquisitions. We'll buy a bank, we'll sell a bank, we'll buy a bank, we'll sell a bank. And when you do an acquisition, you typically reduce overhead, so you get rid of a lot of people. And I was just young, bright, and dumb, and the cheapest one on the payroll probably. So they would get rid of all these people, and then there would be all this opportunity for me to learn and kind of fill in the gap there. So that's how I learned, and that's what made it advantageous for me. But at the same time, I was looked at as the young guy, the kid in the room. What does he know? He hasn't been through any economic, downturns. He's only 22, right? So that was a real challenge. For many, many years, I would not tell anyone how old I was. I would not reveal my age. And it was because I did not want people to consider my acumen any less. I was more educated. I was more experienced than other people, but because of my age, I was considered less knowledgeable. So, big obstacle. And some might say education is an obstacle, right? So I have formal education, obviously, but I would supplement my education as well. When I was tasked to run a data strategy and really drive data analytics into the bank, I went to Wharton and got a certificate, I think it was like an 18-week certificate program to really understand that. When I needed to work with entrepreneurs better to understand their plights, I went to Harvard and got an extension program there to understand what was happening there. So I would supplement my education, my formal education, with additional certificate programs to really raise my profile. Good, yep. Dream bigger. I think we limit ourselves and we handicap ourselves and say, you know, at one point in my career, I just wanted to be like a branch manager. And there's nothing wrong with being a branch manager. But I would encourage myself to challenge myself to dream bigger, aspire bigger. I mean, we use the phrase all the time, the sky is the limit, and it's kind of like just one of those phrases we say as Americans, but it's true. Dream bigger. But if you're going to dream bigger, you got to wake up, and you got to do the work that it takes to achieve that. Great question. Anything else? Yeah, that goes back to, that's a great question. It goes back to my age story I just told, because I'm a millennial, right? And so there's some very senior people in the world of banking. It's an old people's industry for sure. And they would, you know, me sitting in the room, right? And they would say, yeah, those millennials, and I'm like, you know how offensive that statement is? And so I would always work hard to dispel that stereotype. So if they say millennials are lazy, right, I would make sure that I was demonstrating a work ethic that was really strong. But for me, I got to the point where I would also, you know, call people out on it. And I would say, do you know that I am a millennial, right? And what you said is derogatory, right? So it depends on what room you're in. Either prove it wrong, or if you're working with someone that's peer level or in a closed door environment, I would call people out on and say that, you know, that's a little bit offensive. Yep. That's part of leadership. That's part of maturity in business, is knowing how to communicate very clearly, concisely, and respectfully. That will be very important as you journey on. Don't beat anyone up or anything, but you know. Good questions.
Okay, thank you very much. I saw one of your slides, it kind of say slow by design, you know, that bring me to, it just gave me an idea about, because you're in banking industry and you have background in data analytics. I kind of, from my observation, the banking industry kind of go, first everyone kind of try to adopt data analytics and try to implement app, you know, for everybody. And from my banking experience, I think that's great, you know. But for a while, they start to charge fee, you know, they start to make those apps a little bit difficult to use. I think from a leadership perspective, you always have the balance between satisfying the shareholder, you know, and satisfying the customer. Do you have any experience to share about that? You know?
Yeah.
Is it part of the slow by design?
Yeah, so it's funny, I can't find the slide you're talking about, slowed by design, but you're absolutely right. Especially in the banking industry, we would often, we're not going to be fast-paced people. Like, we were very comfortable with being slowed by design, if you will. And I'll tell you what really changed that, and you're going to get sick of me saying it, but there are two things. Number one, the pandemic changed it, because the little old ladies that would love to come into the branch with their Social Security check every first Tuesday and cash it and go into their safe deposit box, well, the pandemic shut the world down. So it gave them no other option but to use technology to do their banking. And so at that period, the industry saw a stark increase in adoption to tech pieces. So that's number one. The other thing is banks now have challengers, right? If you think about, raise your hand if you use PayPal, Venmo, Cash App. It's like a focus group for me in here, right? Guess what? None of those are banks. None of those are banks, but they handle your banking. People get loans from PayPal now, right? So the traditional banking industry is under siege by disruptors, by fintechs, if you will, in a major way, which has now pushed the industry out of the posture of being slow by design and forced us to accelerate in a way that captures market share. Because for every generation beyond the millennial generation, we are losing market share every single day because of these contenders that we're faced with. And so in response to what I believe your question is, banks have to now become more nimble, right, and willing to adjust policies, procedures, protocols, etc., in order to respond to the threat that's on the industry. And that supports the shareholders' expectations as well as the customers' expectations. Yes, sir. Absolutely. Traffic in a branch, in any branch-based bank, my foot traffic in the bank that I work for declines 10% year over year. Industry, the average is between 15 to 25%. You just got to do the math there, right? So we see a declining foot traffic in brick and mortar offices. And so that is why we are driving technology so strong, because we need to meet the consumer where the consumer is. And the consumer is not in a brick and mortar branch. Now, what we do find is that an older demographic skews to going into the branch, and what we do find is a younger demographic skews to going into a branch when there's a complicated matter. If they need a mortgage and it's their first mortgage, or if they're looking for a business loan and it's their first business loan, it's so complex that we see the branches going from transaction centers to consultation centers. So there's less tellers needed and more skilled professionals needed. Yes?
Bernard, my name is Brandon.
Good to meet you, Brandon.
Nice to meet you as well. I'm a business administration student here. As you said, you're an executive vice president, and those positions are open far and few between. So my question for you today is, what differentiated you from the other candidates into demonstrating that you are capable of that position? Would you say it was like the third-party certifications that you got, or was it emotional intelligence or knowledge level expertise, considering that I'm sure most of the other people who were also applying for those positions met the same qualifications?
Yeah, I think it's all of that. Obviously, at this level, education is really important. I will tell you, you said something that I think is critical, emotional intelligence. Spot on. It's not as common as you would believe it is. And so the ability to read a room and we talked about it, and to adapt quickly is really, really, really critical. And then the other thing I would say is my work ethic. I won't go into the story, but I have a very, very strong work ethic, and I believe that I can outwork most people, right? And so when you're able to demonstrate that and present that at a high competence, I think it's a lot of value at the executive level. One of the things that I am really proud of is I matriculated through the industry, which means I've done like everything, right? I've led marketing, I've led the retail networks, I've led product development. So there's not a lot that I cannot do, and I think that has a lot of value. And so that's why I encourage you to seize opportunities. Like if opportunities come your way, even if they're like way outside of what you're interested in, take advantage of it. I was not interested in data strategy 10 years ago. But I was tasked to figure it out. And guess what? In 2025, I'm glad I figured out data strategy, because that's very attractive, right? My boss, my current boss, who is a mentor to me, came into my office and said, we have a foundation. It's a significant foundation, and it's just kind of willy-nilly. We need you to lead a foundation strategy. And I said to her, I'm not a community guy. I came from a big bank. I don't want to do this community stuff. She was like, I don't care. figure it out, right? So we figured it out, we integrated it into our business model, and it's proved materially successful to driving some of our success, right? And I just tell you that story because sometimes you have to take on things that you might not want to build that resume, so that when you get to certain levels, you have a broad view. At the executive level, they're looking for people with a broad span of experience.
Thank you.
Yep.
Hello, sir. God bless you. I have a question for you. So, how did you adapt to being the youngest person in the room while leading older people? Well, people older than you. And I know that you mentioned that you didn't mention your age, but just by looking at you, they obviously know that you're younger than them.
Yeah, I think it was, so I was raised by my grandparents, right? A little town called Kennett Square, which is the mushroom capital of the world, in case you care. And so by nature of being raised by old people, I am very traditional and very respectful. And so leading an older work group, I led with a very obvious measure of I respect you. And because I did that, I expected respect in return, and I worked really hard to demonstrate my competence. I'm not in this position for any other reason other than I'm very competent. So I think it's just a combination of demonstrating I know what I'm doing, and I'm going to respect you doing it. And I think that garners a lot of respect from the workforce. Yeah. And sometimes you just have to have honest, that's clear communication. Because there have been moments where, got a little hostile workplace with, people don't like to always report to really young people, right? And that's a one-on-one conversation. How can we be successful together? Because the question after that is, like, coaching out, right? And no one wants that. So. Did that answer your question? Yep. This is fun. I could do this all day. Don't send me back to the boardroom, please. Say that one more time. Extreme discipline. I get up every morning at 4 o'clock. I go to the gym from 4:30 to 6 o'clock. I read one book every month, like a serious big book. So it's regiment, it's discipline, it's down to eating. My boss told me, many bosses told me, if you're going to be successful, you have to take care of your body. So it's that measure of discipline that is really important. I'm on a plane 3 times a month, flying somewhere to do something for the industry. Managing a lot of people, a lot of stress, so it requires a lot of discipline, and it starts very early. 21 days. It takes 21 days to create any habit. So you have to commit yourself to something for 21 days, and I would start very small. It doesn't have to be getting up people think I'm crazy to get up around 4 o'clock in the morning. To me, I don't know why you want it. You get so much done. But it doesn't have to be something crazy like that. It could be, I'm not going to drink soda for 5 days straight, and don't do it. Or I'm going to read 3 pages in this book every day. Create micro habits, and micro habits grow into macro habits, and then habits grow into lifestyle. So from micro to macro to lifestyle. And then apply that same discipline to everything you do. Good question. I still have bad habits, by the way. So. Anything else? It has been my sincere pleasure to be able to present to you all today. The Q&A section was by far the best of it all. I wish you all the luck. I really encourage you all to figure out your leadership style, because they don't teach that. When I went to college, it wasn't so often taught. So I encourage you to do that, because that's critical. find out who you are or try to figure it out and apply that to everything you do every day. So thank you very much for your time and your attention today.
Thank you very much for your